Welcome to How to Build a Resilient Quote-to-Cash Process, a best practices presentation brought to you by the Controllers Council, IT Executives Council, and Operations Council. Next slide, please. My name is Neil Brown, CEO of the Executive Councils, and before I introduce our partner and sponsor and our subject matter experts, allow me to share some brief housekeeping items. First, we'll have Q&A at the end of the presentation, so please use your GoToWebinar control panel to ask our experts questions. Next, this webinar is CPE eligible for CPAs and controllers, etc., with 4 polling questions, so please answer each poll for CPE, and if not CPE, to benchmark your peers. Please allow 48 hours to receive your CPE certificates via email. And finally, regarding CPE, a brief survey will be displayed directly after the webcast, so please complete that. And finally, you'll receive a link to this webcast via email in the next 24 hours, so no need for notes or screenshots. Next, please. And it's my great pleasure to introduce our partner and sponsor, Workiro, an award-winning intelligent document management system that combines email capture, e-signatures, and seamless collaboration in one intuitive platform. Designed for businesses that work closely with customers and third parties, Workiro ensures that all interactions, approvals, and documents are automatically saved and classified, eliminating manual effort and reducing risk. And of course, also providing quote-to-cash integrations. And with that, I'm very pleased to introduce our 2 subject matter experts, Jason Ross and Chris Muir. And Jason is Enterprise Solutions Strategist at Workiro, and Chris Muir is Vice President of Sales at Workiro. Jason and Chris, take it away.
Thank you very much for having us there, Brian. It's great to see everyone on the call, and thank you very much as well, Chris. As just mentioned there, my job predominantly is to work with businesses all over the world to help them understand where critical information lives, and also to help it easier to find documents in businesses. And today I'm joined by my colleague Chris. Chris, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jason, and hello, everyone. Thank you, Neil, for the kind introduction to us at Workiro. So my background is predominantly in sales and revenue generation, so I've lived firsthand through the tension that often happens between sales teams and other parts of the business, where sales just want to close deals quickly, but finance teams and others need detailed documents and approvals in place. And I'm especially excited about today's session because we're going to bridge that gap. We'll show you how to take the admin burden off sales and give finance what they need automatically, and finally stop quote-to-cash from being such a battle.
Yeah, exactly. So thanks, Chris. Well, we're excited to have everyone with us as we dive into one of the most frustrating challenges many businesses face, which is quote-to-cash. Now, if you've ever experienced delays getting quotes out, mismatched data between teams, or bottlenecks in customer handoffs, today you're in the right place. Today we're going to walk you through and unpack why so many businesses struggle here, especially when they're working with disconnected systems like Salesforce and NetSuite. I'd probably like to pause there for a second and say, you can swap Salesforce and NetSuite in for other systems throughout this process if you don't use those 2. So we're using those as an example throughout today to keep a standard structure. But please feel free when you're asking yourselves these questions to think about the tools that you use. Most importantly, today we'll explore how smarter workflows can turn processes into a strength instead of a headache. Okay, Chris, you want to walk us through our agenda?
Sure, thanks, Jason. Before we dive into the exciting topic, let me give you a quick sense of what we're looking to get you to take away from today's session. So first, we'll look at why quote-to-cash so often breaks down between Salesforce and NetSuite, or other systems, as Jason mentioned, and what that really costs your business. Then we'll explore how to cut out the manual entry, email chaos and version confusion that slows everything down. We'll show you how to create real visibility across sales, operations, and finance so everyone's working from the same source of truth. And finally, we'll give you a simple way to benchmark where your process is today and the steps you can take to further future-proof it as you grow. So lots to cover, and we should really get started.
Yeah, exactly. I think we'll start with launching our first poll. That's all right. So if you guys can help us with your voting. So we're going to bring up our first poll, which is your biggest challenge in the quote to cash process. So we'll give you a minute just to do that while Chris and I have a glass of water.
So how automated is your current quote to cash workflow? Select one of the following. Please take a few seconds. All answers are anonymous and confidential, of course. And I'm watching the voting. It's nearly complete. Let's go ahead and close the poll, and I'll just briefly share these results and ask Jason and Chris if you want to comment on these.
Yeah, I think that's a fair reflection of what we usually see, Chris, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Chris runs and has run for a number of sales organizations before, so you know, getting your take on the partly automated and mostly manual is an interesting one. It's interesting that no one has answered fully automated, which is a bit of a utopia, but we're going to sort of take you a bit of a journey in understanding that. But any further comments on that, Chris, before we move on?
No, I think I just echo what you said, Jason, that it certainly resonates with what I've seen over the last 25 years and most of the conversations that we're having with people at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, great. Well, let's just focus on, let's pause for a second, take a bit of a reality check. Let's have a look at something before we dive into quote to cash, which is a very important process, particularly for finance people, operations, and you know, execs, because ultimately quote to cash is turning your business opportunities into revenue, which is what a lot of companies are here to do. Before we dive into that, there is a sort of an overarching thing that we want to make sure that you guys are aware of and take away from this. There's structured data, and there's roughly around about 20% of the data that you guys hold will be in structured systems, and you know, we've got, you know, different levels of that, as we've just seen. So 20% are structured information, which is things like your customer records, your opportunities, your maybe your product library, your ERP system, so certainly your general ledger, but all in your chart of accounts, but lots of things in structured data in databases and in systems, whether they are a new cloud system like NetSuite or whether they're an old system, they are structured. But the other thing to bear in mind is that there is also 80% of that data that lives outside of those systems in unstructured format, stuff that can't be displayed in fields or in tables, and therefore you can't generally report on them, even if you've got some of the best reporting in the world. And it holds a lot of key information, particularly if there's knowledge in it. So an email, as an example, could hold a customer promise in it that's sitting somewhere buried in a folder somewhere, or in an inbox, or scattered into a SharePoint folder or something like that. None of these tools that you're generally using are talking with each side of this this line. And quote to cash is the biggest example of where, when you don't bridge this gap, you can end up with quite a lot of pain. Like an example that we had and we come across is where a sales manager went to an appointment via a flight, I will add, turned up for a sales deal, provided a quote, and the customer said, your colleague gave me it considerably cheaper 4 months ago via email. So information that was sitting in an inbox that not only was it reputationally damaging, but also could have been very easily avoided if that information was surfaced and connected together. Anything else to add to that, Chris, from your perspective?
No, I think, yeah, again, we've seen lots of examples of where this breaks down, right, between the different siloed departments that are using different systems and different tools. So yeah, it's certainly a real challenge.
Yeah, so we're here today to help talk about the whole of the, both sides of this equation, and help because that's really where you can start to make a big difference in your quote to cash. So talk about making a big difference, Chris. I think we've got a stat that we like to bring out.
Yeah, it's very interesting that McKinsey found that companies who have optimized this process grow their ARR by up to 4 times faster than their peers, and that's hugely significant if you think about the challenge that we all have in terms of managing and securing growth. So it's really much more than just a technical inconvenience. It's actually starting to block revenue or block growth, and that's key for many businesses.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think just as a thanks for that, Chris. But just as a bit of a just to be very clear, let's have a look at the quote to cash process. When we talk about quote to cash, I won't go through all of these, but we are generally talking about the production of some form of quotation, whether you need configuration or just a pricing sheet or a pricing list, right the way through to potentially contract negotiation, approval, both internally and externally. And those things generally happen in your CRM. Those business processes happen in your CRM, Salesforce, in the example that we're using today. Once that gets approved, or in Salesforce terminology, closed won, then that's where the things start to get thrown over the fence or not. And on the right hand side here, looking at the screen, you've then got your ERP or your execution and the delivery of that order fulfillment to be able to run the billing, generate your invoices, recognize the revenue, and potentially, if you're in a subscription business, you'd start your renewal process, but maybe you don't. So that's the process that we're talking. When we talk about quote to cash, that is a high level version of that process. And you'll see here there are a number of places where this really is systematic. Apart from where the salesperson skill comes in, I'd be interested on your take on this, Chris, is predominantly you want them working on the negotiation part, right? Out of all of these, you want that bit to be the bit that has the skill from a salesperson's perspective. That's where you want them spending their energy, I would have thought, rather than the systems around it.
Yeah, from this part of the process, absolutely. Yeah, the ability to take the conversation from being a prospect to a customer is definitely where the sales acumen should demonstrate itself.
Yeah, so let's just walk through though a few of the problems and challenges, Chris, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. There's lots. I think if you look at the icons and text that we've got on the slides, it's pretty obvious that where you have manual data entry and duplication, you find teams entering the same information across different systems or multiple systems, which just obviously wastes time and clearly introduces the possibility for errors. And there's lots of ways to get around that, but it's certainly a problem. That then leads on to delayed processes and inefficiency. So when we're not automating workflows or making things streamlined, then certain things will fall through the cracks and productivity will be hit. Then you get to the point of poor visibility reporting because of those problems. So when you don't have a centralized real-time view of data, then making informed decisions becomes really difficult and often becomes reactive rather than strategic. And together, these challenges slow down operations, they frustrate teams, they limit growth potential, and have an impact, as you alluded to, Jason, with the example you gave of impacting credibility, both internally and externally. Workiro comes in to solve those problems by automating and orchestrating and empowering teams to focus on the high impact work, again, like Jason highlighted, around the areas that people